I wasn't sure what happened or why everyone in my family stopped talking, but it was starting to freak me out. My house was always filled with noise. If I wasn't waking up to the sound of my two sisters fighting, I was being dragged from my bed by my dad wanting me to help him sand the boat he was building. It started on Sunday when I woke to an eerie silence in the house. Usually, my mother had me up early for pancakes, but she never called me for breakfast. At first, I thought everyone had left, but when I went downstairs, my mother was in the kitchen. Why didn't you call me? I asked. She barely turned around, only glancing at me through the corner of her eye. Mom, what's the matter with you? She didn't even turn around to acknowledge me, just continued doing what she was doing. Double quotes, did I do something to upset her? I thought as I just sat there bewildered at my mother's strange behavior. I had been getting in trouble lately with people in the neighborhood who didn't take kindly to me playing or riding my bike up and down the street. It was harmless, but the neighbors didn't seem to like kids playing in the street. But my parents never really scolded me over it. My dad was sitting in his chair in the sitting room with the TV off. He tried his best not to look at me, which started to worry me. What's wrong with Mom? I asked. My dad and I were really close. We were like best friends, until I stepped out of line, that is. But 99% of the time, he was great. So, I was even more confused when he looked away from me without answering. Why won't you answer me? Have I done something to upset you? I could see by the distressed look on his face that ignoring me the way he was bothered him, which only freaked me out even more. I ran up the stairs to my sister's room. The only time they liked talking to me was when they were tormenting me. But if I'd done something wrong to piss my parents off, they would be the first to tell me. I knocked on my sister's door, but no response. I could hear them talking in the room. I opened the door to find them sitting on their beds with the same strange look on their faces my parents had. Not you too. What is wrong with everyone today? Have I done something? They sat there trying not to look at me. If this is some prank you're all in on, stop it, because you are starting to scare me. Double quotes. They continued to sit there nervously making eye contact with each other. I picked up one of their shoes and threw it at Becky's head. She flinched as the shoe made contact, but didn't utter a word. Any other day she would have trashed me. Later that evening things took a turn for the weirder. I had come downstairs to find them all in the kitchen. My mom was cutting up vegetables while my two sisters and my dad sat at the kitchen table. They sat there not saying a word and had the same strange look on their faces. Can you please stop this now? It's not funny. All they did was look at each other, trying their best not to acknowledge my existence. I was more than freaked out at this stage. Double quotes. Mom, I love you, I said as I tried putting my arms around her. As she tried to move away from me, the knife in her hand slipped, slicing into her finger. Double quotes. Mom, your finger. There's blood everywhere. Double quotes. I could see the pain in her face, but she just continued cutting the vegetables in silence. Dad, aren't you going to say something? She's bleeding. It felt like I had woken up in a terrifying alternate dimension where nothing made sense. The fear I was now feeling was palatable, and what made it worse, no one seemed to care. I felt alone for the first time in my life. That night, as I lay in my room wondering why my life had taken a terrifying turn, I heard someone moving around outside my door. I jumped from my bed and was about to go check when a note slipped through the bottom of my door. They're watching us. Your loving sister, Becky. The next morning, I went downstairs to the kitchen. My mom, Dad, and my sister Casey were sitting at the table whispering to each other, but went quiet as soon as I walked in. Where's Becky? I asked. They sat there silent, but the expressions on their faces told me something terrible had happened to her. Who's watching us? As I stood there, I burst into tears. Double quotes. Please tell me what's happening. I'm scared. I looked at my mom and then at my dad, but they just sat there trying their best to not make eye contact with me. Something had happened to my sister, and I needed to help her. I picked up the phone and dialed 911. Hello. What's your emergency? My name is Adam Best. I live at 13 Armenting Street. I think my sister has been kidnapped. I could hear the operator breathing on the other end of the phone, but they didn't say a word. Hello. Did you hear me? I asked. Suddenly a deafening crackle sounded through the phone before it went silent. I could run away. I thought to myself as I sat on my bed. I was troubled by the note my sister gave me. Who's watching us, and who are they? I thought, when suddenly something caught my eye. I was surprised I hadn't noticed it before. There was a small camera, barely visible, nestled in the upper corner of my room. My heart started pounding as I realized my every move was being watched. I covered the camera with a piece of cloth and sat back down, trying to think. Suddenly, the lights in my room flickered and then went out, plunging me into darkness. My door burst open, and standing in the doorway were my mom, Dad, and my sister Casey. We are sorry for ignoring you. We were trying to protect you. But now you need to run. They are coming for you. Who's coming for me? I cried. The neighborhood watch. I grabbed my bike from the shed and took off down the street. All the neighbors stood on their porches watching me. I cycled for my life. All that was running through my mind was the thoughts of never seeing my family again. I got bored last night in late July and started driving with no particular destination. I live in the middle of nowhere in Kentucky, so there are a lot of winding country highways with very little traffic. I enjoy going on night rides to clear my head and distress. A few years ago, when I was very depressed, I would do this nightly. I decided this particular night I would go farther than normal. I would drive pretty far. Then when I hit either the Ohio River or a place I could consider memorable enough to consider an experience to go to, I would go home. I ended up about an hour and a half from home in a town I don't know the name of, at a little shop with a single gas pump, on the roadside by a very tall hill. At roughly 10:30 p.m., it was pitch black outside. I felt a strange feeling as I came up to the railroad crossing at the border to this town. I cannot describe it. Every building was abandoned. Before I walked in, there was a little black cat outside. There were wooden plaques and statues outside. There was sound coming from inside before I walked in. I stood outside for a moment before going in to see if anyone was there, listening for voices or sound. There were voices talking. I opened the door and I'm greeted with these two workers. One was in the back and just stopped what she was doing to look at me. The other was behind a deli counter, mumbling something I could not understand. As I walked in, the fluorescent lighting managed to somehow light the entire single room of this shop, while making all the items somehow hard to read from the harsh glow. I saw a painting of a way with her lamb and felt a strange connection to this piece of art, as if I should buy it. I did not. As I looked up from holding it, I noticed both the workers there were just sort of staring at me. I bought a pack of Mingua, popular local beef jerky, and a soda, and left. I noticed afterward, as I left, there was no more noise emanating from the shop when I was leaving to my car. It had become totally silent. I stopped to smoke a cigarette outside my car, but felt I should book it instead. It felt, strangely, like I shouldn't be there any longer. As I left and drove away, past the railroad crossing, I felt as if I had somehow re-entered the normal world. I instinctively felt some kind of change. I slowed my car and looked in the rear-view mirror. I noticed that the lights weren't there from the shop any longer. I arrived home around midnight. I've been racking my brain as to what happened the entire day. What was up with this shop? Why couldn't I see it when I was leaving? But, most importantly, why did I feel like something was wrong the entire time? Was somebody, or something, watching me? When I was a child, My grandmother gave me an old-fashioned porcelain doll. It had curly hair and wore a pretty dress. Despite being a boy, I found the doll fascinating and named her Emily. My grandmother told me that Emily had been passed down through generations in our family. It was meant to be a keepsake, a symbol of love and continuity. As a young boy, I was intrigued by Emily. I would often look at her, brush her hair, and imagine the stories she could tell. She had the kindest face, with blue eyes that seemed to sparkle in the light. I never felt alone with Emily around, but things started to change when I was about 8 years old. One night, I woke up to the sound of soft humming. At first, I thought it was my mother, singing a lullaby. But then I realized the sound was coming from the corner of my room where Emily sat on a small wooden chair. The doll's eyes seemed to be looking straight at me. I was terrified, but I couldn't look away. Her eyes, which once felt comforting, now seemed to follow me wherever I moved. The next morning, I told my parents about the humming. They brushed it off as a bad dream, saying it was just my imagination running wild. I wanted to believe them, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. However, the humming continued every night. Sometimes, I would wake up to find Emily in different positions, even though I was sure I hadn't touched her. She would be sitting on my desk, lying on my bed, or facing the window as if she were looking out. One night, I decided to prove to my parents that I wasn't making it up. I took my dad's old tape recorder, hid it under my pillow, and pressed record before going to sleep. That night, the humming was louder than ever. I even heard soft whispers, almost like someone was talking to the doll. It was as if Emily had come to life and was sharing secrets with an invisible friend. In the morning, I played the tape back for my parents. They heard the humming and whispers too, and their faces turned pale. My dad decided it was time to investigate. He took the doll to an antique expert who specialized in paranormal activities. The expert examined Emily closely. He held her gently, turning her over and inspecting every inch. After a long silence, he looked up and told us that the doll was haunted by the spirit of a little girl who had died tragically many years ago. The spirit was lonely and wanted company, which is why the doll seemed to move and hum. The expert explained that spirits often attach themselves to objects they feel connected to, and in this case, it was Emily. My parents decided we needed to get rid of the doll. They contacted a priest who was known for dealing with such matters. The priest came to our house and performed a ritual to release the spirit. He chanted prayers and sprinkled holy water on Emily. After the ritual, the priest buried the doll in a sacred place, ensuring the spirit would be at peace and could no longer haunt anyone. From that day on, we never heard the humming again. Our home felt lighter, and I could finally sleep without fear. However, the experience left a lasting impact on me. To this day, I still get chills thinking about those nights. I never kept another doll, and every time I see one, I remember the haunted doll named Emily and the nights filled with eerie humming. Even now, as an adult, I can't help but wonder what would have happened if we hadn't taken action. The memory of Emily serves as a reminder that sometimes the things we love can hold secrets beyond our understanding.